What's up YouTube? This is Ultra Rye, and today this is gonna be the fourth video of Back to Basics, right? This is gonna be a huge series, lots of videos just covering basic things that you should know in order to improve your game, right? Now today we're gonna go over Fuzzy Garden. One of the things that frustrate people the most, right, is when someone does an overhead low mix-up, right? And we're going to cover this specifically inside of a string, right? So let's talk about Johnny Cage, right? He has 214, which is a low, and then he has 212, right? Now, a lot of people can react to that overhead because it's 24 frames, right? But there are some times you can't react to the overhead, and this is when Fuzzy Garden really comes into play, right? And I'm going to show you it also with Melina, right? Because 2-1 Melina is 18 frames and you ain't reacting to 18 frames. So, Fuzzy Garden is a way to block this mix-up every single time, right? If you're not good at reacting to overheads, or maybe there's a little bit of latency, right? Fuzzy Garden can help you block all mix-ups, and you can do it every single time as long as you practice, right? Now, obviously, you gotta play your character, right? If your opponent's using and finishing these strings, then Fuzzy Garden is going to work. If he's not finishing the strings, then Fuzzy Garden is really not going to work as much because he's not finishing the strings. But we are going to record Johnny Cage. Go in. We got to switch characters. We're going to go in 214, right? And then we are going to record him 212. So we have it on random, right? So we can't see what's coming. If you look above the 1-2, like I don't know if the overhead low is coming, but what we're doing is we are blocking low first and then blocking overhead, right? And we're going to block this mix up every single time, right? As long as we block low, let go, and then block the overhead, right? I want to do the low, bro. There we go. So we're going to block that mix up every single time. Every single time, as long as we go low overhead first, we are going to block that mix up. Now, we got to block low first, right? Because the overhead is 24 frames, right? And the low is 16 frames, which means the low comes out first. And that's why we got to block low first. Let's say the overhead came out first. Then we would have to block overhead first, then low, right? So you can block it whether the overhead comes out first or low comes out first. You just need to know the frame data of the speed of the move and then punish accordingly, right? Know that Johnny Cage's 212 is -6, so it's not punishable. But his 214 is -8, and you can punish that. So that is just something to keep in mind. But now let's get into the more difficult, right? If he's doing either 212, or I mean 214, or 2-1 Melina, this is where it gets tricky, right? Because the low comes out in 16 frames, and Melina comes out in 18 frames. So there's only a 2-frame gap, which means you only have a 2-frame fuzzy gap. Is harder to fuzzy gap because you gotta be faster at it, right? You don't gotta be super fast with your down up of the 2-1-2 mix up or the 2-1-4 mix up. But the 2-1-4 or 2-1 chameleon, you have to do it really quick, and it's not the easiest thing to do because there's only a 2-frame gap. But I'm gonna try to do it for you, and I'll show you that it does work. there we go. So there we go. So as you can see, it is possible, right? But it's really hard because of the only 2 frames in between, right? But just know that this works with a lot of strings, right? Not every string is going to be a 2-frame gap and stuff like that. And you have to also understand that, why isn't that, there's a lot of characters that have fake headless mix-ups and they are not real. And once you understand that and you go through and you practice and you figure out what's a real 50-50 and what's a not real 50-50, then you can start to implement this. And I promise you, you are going to go way further if you implement this, because you're not going to get mixed nearly. Like I said, this is not the easiest thing in the world to do, right? But it's one of those things that if you get down, it's going to up your game and it's going to get you up a couple levels. Because especially at like beginners and stuff, they like to finish strings. Like they don't really stagger pressure. They just kind of go. They just kind of go all the way in, and they um, don't really understand. Like they think it's a 50-50, and they don't know that someone can just do fuzzy guard to block these mix-ups. So, like I said, to recap, don't ever get mixed up by a fake 50-50. As long as the low or the overhead comes out faster, you can always fuzzy guard it. Obviously, you can't fuzzy guard an overhead and a low if they both come out in like 15 frames, because then it's a 50-50, right? But as you just know that the low into chameleon is way harder to fuzzy guard than the 2-1-4 into 2-1-2, because there's only a 2-frame gap versus an 8-frame gap. So, especially with online latency, it's going to be really hard to always block the chameleon 50-50 or the chameleon low fuzzy guard, but the 2-1-2 and the 2-1-4, you can pretty much do it all the time as long as you understand. Alright, well, make sure y'all join the Discord if y'all want a good community that you can play games and ask questions. We are in week 5 of our tournament. We'll be doing top 8 here in about 3 weeks, and then we will start another one if you want to join. Super beginner friendly. Make sure you join us on Twitch for our King of the Hills and tournament matches. And I appreciate y'all and have a fantastic day.